Members, we will resume very soon. The purpose of this special meeting today is to listen to the views of the public and deputations. And the topic is establishing a unified ICT professional recognition framework in Hong Kong. I'd like to invite members from the Task Force on ICT Professional Development and Recognition. You can put on your earpiece and choose the right channels, 0 for the floor, 1 for Chinese, and 2 for the English. Apart from the government officials, the accounts given by the representatives today will not be protected under the Electoral Powers and Privileges Ordinance. So please take note. Please also be reminded that under the electoral guidelines for the audience, the security guidelines have been laid out, and the guidelines have been included in the guidelines in front of you. Those in the public gallery can ask our security staff for details. We have 63 deputations and representatives today. Let's start the second session of the meeting. Each deputation has 2 minutes each. Please be concise and only give your main points. You don't have to read out everything in your papers. If others have comments, you can submit your views. And these papers have been published on LegCo's website and circulated with all of you. So when you speak, please don't use English and Chinese at the same time in order to facilitate interpreting. The first to speak, Dr. Ho. Thank you, Chairperson, members. We support the establishment of a unified framework for ICT professional recognition. However, in order to have success under the scheme, the government have to seek consultation from the local trade. The government suggested an awarding body to provide the recognitions. This, as outlined in paragraph 11 of the paper, this is viable. However, we need to give enough thoughts, and the relevant bodies must have substantial scale, and they must be monitored. And it must be such bodies must be widely recognized by the academia and the trade, and as such, the academia and the trade must be involved in the establishment of standards for awarding bodies. And the framework should adopt international standards, and it should be able to interface with China. And more organizations should have a chance to become awarding bodies. And the awarding body should be able to represent the trade. And I recommend the committee to be comprised of members from functional constituencies from LegCo. With the commencement of the IT Bureau, more discussions must be carried out. Chairperson, members, the New People's Party supports the establishment of a united ICT professional recognition framework in Hong Kong. This can help improve the standing of ICT professionals, and we can attract more youngsters to enter ICT. We have 3 principles. It should be voluntary in basis. A lot of people are concerned that a mandatory framework will discourage people from entering ICT, and SMEs are also worried about manpower supply and the cost of employment. Second, we should recognize this professional recognition framework. In Hong Kong and other countries, we already have similar professional recognition frameworks, and we can learn from these existing frameworks to provide reference for practitioners and enterprises. And this way we can also avoid an overlap of resources and increase cost effectiveness in order to help more people. Third, Hong Kong's framework should be in line with international standards. We hope the government can acknowledge this point and promote cross-recognition of Hong Kong with international or mainland qualification frameworks in order to improve overall acceptability. The Cervantes Policy Institute also supports the establishment of this recognition framework, and we have a few extra points. Technology is ever-changing, and as such, the recognition framework should be updated constantly. We recommend a review every 3 years or so to the framework. And after the establishment of the framework, we should do something on public education in order to improve the reputation of ICT. We have to promote the recognition framework. So awarding bodies might find it hard to be self-financing in the beginning phases. So we agree that the government will bear the cost, the operating cost for the first 3 years, and then afterwards we will see how the situation develops. My name is Ko. I own an SME, and I'm also an education worker. IT does not lack talents, but the amounts of manpower. If you ask many people, they will say the same. We've always had qualification frameworks, but has the government reviewed how effective those frameworks are? On the long run, I do not oppose to the framework. However, I think it shouldn't be implemented too swiftly. We have to think over it carefully in order to not waste public money. Right now, we are talking about an IT bureau. Why don't we leave this framework to the new bureau? If we are to spend money anyway, we should spend prudently and efficiently. That's all I have to say. Dr. C.K. Wong. I represent a software company, iAspect Technologies Limited. It has been founded 25 years ago, and we have the following recommendations. The logic and reasons have been outlined in the paper I submitted, so I'm not going to repeat myself again today. After hearing the views this morning, I have 2 points to make. Why don't we interface with the mainland? This issue has been in place for quite some time. In 2004, the mainland set up an IT testing center in Hong Kong, and I have been in contact with the mainland authorities in recent years, and they think that Hong Kong doesn't provide enough support. There are people taking exams, but we don't have enough manpower. And we have maintained close communications with the mainland. So I don't agree that we are not communicating with the mainland enough, and I don't buy into this view. And on the timing of the implementation. This is not news either. It has been discussed in the trade more than 10 years ago. The task force has consolidated our work over the past 10 years ago and consolidate them into a unified framework. And there is urgency in our work. I'm quite disappointed that the DAB raised a motion to postpone the discussion of this topic. A lot of members are absent today. I think we have to be careful with this motion. Should we wait until? Should we wait and hear the comments of more LegCo members? Time's up. I'm sorry. William Yip. I represent the IT Committee, World Trade United Foundation. I think it's too not enough preparatory work has been done, and there isn't enough consultation, and the issue of mutual recognition with the mainland has been ignored. In the past, the professional recognition framework should be at the top of the pyramid. We have 130,000 or so practitioners, but why is this still not enough? Under this framework, have you considered training work and auxiliary facilities to support this framework? And this framework should be market-oriented. Mainland is a huge market nowadays, and IT is ever-changing. Have you considered the market trends? Apart from the local perspective, we also have to interface with other markets. And this hasn't been mentioned under the current framework proposal. And on manpower recognition, and the IT office hasn't considered the practitioners in SMEs, and the coverage rate is inadequate. Professor Lee. I support the concept of this proposal, and I appreciate the OGCIO's and the task force's idea. So please be reminded to speak in either Chinese or English, but not both, in order to make life easier for interpreters. From my 50 years or so of work experience, having said so much, we have mentioned so many things, but the key is professional recognition. We have been talking about professional recognition, which has been in place for a long time. Maybe many of you are very young. In 1983, in a manager's magazine, the issue of licensing has been mentioned. This I have reminded Mr. Sin Chung Kai years ago of this issue.
You mentioned professional recognition. We have to be put on a par with doctors and lawyers, so we should be treated in the same way as they. As for the pharmaceutical factories and other similar enterprises, if we have a recognition framework, a lot of problems related to them can be solved. Next, Mr. Louis Ma. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I welcome the proposed recognition framework. Professional development is a long path. We can take reference from other professions which have matured. But we can do streaming. That is, we can have professionals, technicians, and ordinary members of the profession. The requirements for these groups are different. We shouldn't mix them together, otherwise we cannot continue with this discussion. So streaming is important. The ICT qualification framework is all along developing. In future, for qualification, recognition, and framework that can serve as a foundation. We can also take reference from the international community and the mainland. There should be mutual recognition and exchanges. That is very important to the future development of the profession, particularly if we can have a QF for students at the secondary and university level. We can create a multiple career path for them in terms of professional development. Then we can attract higher quality students to join the IT profession that will be conducive to the development of the profession. So I support a unified recognition mechanism. And this consultation process is actually continuously enhancing such a mechanism. No mechanism is perfect right from the start, so we can continue to enhance this mechanism. Next, Mr. Chan. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, members. I, Daniel Chan, has been a member of the profession for many, many years. I'm also the boss of an IT company. In principle, it is okay to have a recognition framework for the profession, but the government's document is very unclear. And there's no publicity and consultation done for IT company bosses. So it seems that this is a hasty exercise. Resource costs is a concern for IT firm operators. We have to arrange training for our personnel. We're worried, many bosses are worried. We're worried that talents trained by us may be taken away by other companies. Then we'll be wasting our money. And under the government's proposal, this framework is voluntary. It's only in the long run that they'll consider mandatory framework. What do they mean by long term? For the business sector, the major concern is uncertainty. So the government should tell us the timetable when the framework will become monetary. And then you have to maintain the brand neutrality of the framework. Many IT enterprises are related to this. NCSP or certified Cisco professionals. Can the framework cover all the demands of the profession? Knowledge, experience, and skills are important for the profession members. Will the recognition framework satisfy our needs? If the framework cannot help SMEs and is purely to satisfy the government and the professional bodies, the framework may become a burden for SMEs. Thank you. Next, Mr. Wong. Chairman, members, good morning. I'm Reggie Wong, Chairman of the IT Software Association. Upon receiving the consultation document, we consulted the industry and professionals. In terms of the voluntary nature of the framework, we would like to have a timetable from the government. How long will it be non-mandatory, that is voluntary? For software vendors, we are operating our business locally on the mainland and overseas. In fact, the industry has done everything. CMI, all sorts of recognition have been completed by us. So we'd like to know the timetable of the government. When will other jurisdictions recognize us? Now we're recognizing others. When will the others recognize us? Can we have a timetable? And then from the document, we can see that only professional bodies are represented in the task force. In the ICT profession, trade associations and related bodies should also be represented in the task force. Yesterday, at a dinner gathering with over 300 IT professionals participating in a British academic society, we came to the view that the immediate implementation of the framework cannot resolve the manpower shortage problem. There must be another solution. And then for professionalism, BCS should be referred to. There should be recognition of the overall CV of a person, and examinations must be conducted to differentiate the various professions. Next, Mr. Chung. Thank you, Chairman. I studied IT and had been developing IT for many years. I'm now a boss. Well, basically, we view this from the angle of a user. We would like to have a clearer standard so that we can tell what is good and what is bad. And then we should have different levels, like preliminary, medium, and senior level. So this so-called QF shouldn't be a single-tier task force or establishment. In the document, there's only one tier of recognition. If you're okay, you're a professional. Otherwise, you're not a professional. Well, this is very much different from the QF because the QF has different levels. This is precisely the first point of concern. You should think through the whole framework before going to consider the methodology of establishing the framework. You may need to take more time to think about that. And just now, many people said that we have to interface with the mainland and the international community. There should be mutual recognition. This is a major concern, and we would like to know the result. Otherwise, internally, the government may say, oh, these people are all right. But if they cannot go elsewhere in the world, you'll be wasting resources in establishing the so-called QF. Thirdly, for the framework itself, should we have a set of assessment criteria to define whether a person is successful? Within ourselves, we have a set of criteria, but this is not mentioned in the document, so I hope to see some improvement. Next, Mr. Zhe. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, members. I represent the SMEs. I'm also an SME operator. For the QF, there's something not clear. Number one, for the IT professional framework proposed, how will it impact on SMEs? That's not clear. Secondly, human resources costs may be involved. We may have more difficulty in recruitment. Now it's already very difficult to employ IT personnel. With this framework, will it be even more difficult? Thirdly, when we now recruit employees, we look at their skills and relevant experience and knowledge, and also professional recognition. With this additional QF, will this QF be able to satisfy our demands? Can this QF reflect the standard of the technical personnel or professional personnel that we need? Fourthly, in the recommendation or document, it said that the mechanism is a voluntary one. It's only in the long run that you have a mandatory framework. Now, when will the framework be implemented? When will it become mandatory? For government tendering or all other IT projects, accreditation is needed. Now we need an IT recognized personnel for signing documents. And what about internal audit? Do we need a qualified IT personnel to sign documents? We have these doubts. Fifthly, the IT profession is very broad. The related knowledge and technology are also very difficult and complicated. And should recognition or accreditation be reviewed year after year or annually? Mr. Yao, well, I represent the Hong Kong General Chamber of Small and Medium Business. For the 300,000 employers in Hong Kong, we do not know why we should support the proposal. After studying the proposal, we're of the view that the framework will affect hugely the recruitment of staff. Employers will face manpower shortage. Quality is not a problem. Well, after the launching of the framework, the SMEs will have to bear higher costs. Maybe it doesn't matter for the large companies. Foreign companies and mainland talents may be deterred from applying for posts. Besides, for the employees, when they hold a certain qualification, they may have higher expectations about wages. So there will be financial pressure on the operations of SMEs. For our chamber, we think the government should be very cautious about all these and shouldn't be launched in 2014. I represent the Young Executives Committee of the HKG CSMB. We'd like to ask the government to shelve the proposal for the time being. For the time being, we can't see how the proposal can enhance the standard of IT personnel and promote a knowledge-based economy. All along, we've employed IT people, and we've taken reference from international recognized qualifications like those of Australia, Canada, and the mainland, or even Hong Kong. We took reference from a lot of professional qualifications throughout the world, and all along we've not spotted any problem, any difficulty. For the new framework proposed, whether or not it will be accepted internationally, we have to wait and see. For the time being, we don't see why this framework should be launched so hastily in 2014. For the SMEs, for expenditure and costs, they may rise as a result of this framework. So the government must be more prudent. More consultation and studies have to be conducted, in particular studying the possible impact on SMEs. And the role of enterprises should be enhanced under the framework. The government should not hastily launch the QF. Thank you. Next, Mr. Young. Thank you, Chairman and members. I represent the Hong Kong United Youth Association. Well, basically, we support the concepts and ideals behind the proposed framework, but the proposal is not too mature yet, and if it is launched hastily, there may be adverse impact on the profession. I have the following doubts. First of all, under the IT recognition framework, we already have different kinds of accreditation, like CPIT, those under the Institution of Engineers and so forth. Why can't we develop those in a better manner? Why do we need a new framework? And then a number of engineering societies locally and in the UK can, through the engineer registration laws, set up their own recognition body. So it's already internationally recognized at the moment. How do you view that? why do you need a new approach? You spend so much public money on this in order to attain international standard. Is it really worthwhile? And some previous speakers mentioned interfacing with the mainland. ICT professionals are very often deployed to branch offices on the mainland. Have we resolved that already? What will happen to the future framework for this aspect? Consultation is not sufficient for this exercise. Will this proposed framework be effective? Otherwise, a lot of effort and money as well as time will be spent by the bosses, but in vain. Mr. Yang, I'm the Hong Kong United Youth Science and Technology Association representative. We are very concerned about the profession, particularly the youngsters. We are very concerned about the development of our young people in this sector. In the consultation document, we can see that a lot of aspects should be studied more in detail and in a more thorough manner. Many speakers spoke on the interface with the mainland, so I won't dwell on that further. But there's another point. To what extent will the government be committed to the new framework? Will the government proactively promote the framework internally? Within the OGCIO, how many of their colleagues will try to get accreditation under the framework? How many are willing to sit for the relevant examinations? What about other government departments? The government is the major employer of IT professionals, so the government's approach will impact on the private sector to a huge extent. So we're very concerned, and the government needs to further explain. As for this framework and its operation and in the awarding of qualifications, KPIs were mentioned just now. How will standards be assessed and how much resources will be given for this framework? It's anticipated that within 3 years, the framework will be able to finance itself. What if that is not going to happen? Who will bear the cost of the operation of the framework, the profession or the government? And will the IT profession or other professions be impacted upon? The government needs to respond. So we need to think more about this proposed QF. Next, Mr. Cheng. Thank you, Chairman. I'm a pioneer in the IT sector. In principle, my attitude is a positive one for this government proposal. But I think the government is not well prepared for a public consultation. First of all, we don't need a new standard because there are already a lot of professional standards set by the leaders. Take, for example, those on website users and mobile apps. And previously, I've gone through certain products. I actually looked at the contribution of a particular software to the society. Sometimes an IT person may not need a certificate because science and technology are ever advancing. Besides, there should be interfacing at least between Taiwan and the mainland. In Taiwan, I may employ computer designers. In the US, I may employ expert friends to advise me. Now, when I hire these people, they don't need to give regard to the standards adopted in Hong Kong, so the proposed framework may not be very helpful to the profession. Fourthly, many professional organizations participating are not leaders in the profession. For example, they're not Amazon or Google.
And these are the companies whose technologies we will use. So without the support, the proposal would not work. Thank you. Mr. Lui. I'm Tam Siu Wai. We are the trade union of IT professionals. We believe that professional recognition framework is conducive to the long-term development of the IT industry, improve our image, and also provide for an articulation pathway for practitioners. However, for the government to hastily put forward this proposal for qualification framework, recognition framework, we do have our reservations. Especially the part about recognition. This government proposal said it will only consider the academic qualifications. I understand that many ICT professionals, after they've obtained the basic recognition, they will continue with online learning to enhance the competence. Many ICT jobs depends a lot on, requires a lot of creativity and so on, and it is also an industry which gives the practitioners a lot of pride and self-confidence. We appreciate the contribution, and I don't think we should rule out these people from the industry with the setting up of this framework. The proposal has not considered how you can bring more direct benefits to the ICT professionals. Let's say if a practitioner satisfies some of the requirements in the framework, can they be expected to enjoy the salaries they expect for? So we therefore suggest that the government should invite more representatives from the unions and so on to join the task force so that they'll listen to the views of the industry. Next, Mr. Lee. When we go to the government's document, one will find that the proposed frame QF will not be able to interface with the mainland. Well, the existing registration regime is already working well, both in the mainland and is recognized overseas. Then why does the government need to put forward this new qualification framework in haste? How many students in Hong Kong now will actually go to the mainland or to study overseas? Do we have those figures? Many students in Hong Kong, after they graduate from the mainland, they may work in the IT firms in the mainland, and they like Baidu and Tencent. After they work in these companies and they return to Hong Kong, can this QF also recognize their status? And one more point: if we cannot interface with the mainland, and if we cannot also interface with the international qualification frameworks, do we need to implement this framework? Shouldn't we first have a thorough consultation before we implement something new, rather than putting forward the proposal so hastily and tell us that you're putting forward this framework and you want us to support you? In Hong Kong, many people are saying that there's a lack of consultation, and it's not very fair for young people. Young people are already facing a dim future. We don't. And for young people joining the IT industry, it's a good option. So if you place all these barriers and restrictions and thresholds, will that be fair for the young people? So I hope members will consider this point carefully. Next, Mr. Yip. Good morning, honourable members. I speak in my capacity as a SME proprietor. Personally, I agree with the proposal to launch this QF, but IT is now developing rapidly. The SME also need to hire the ICT talents. Given that it's so difficult to hire people, and for you to put forward this proposal, would it make will you be making it more difficult for SMEs to hire ICT professionals? So I therefore hope the government will shelve this plan for the time being. And regarding the board of the proposed ICT QF framework, there is no participation from representatives from the industry. So how can you ensure that you can actually meet our needs and satisfy our aspirations? Mr. Yip, thank you. Good morning. I represent the proprietor of an SME today. I believe the majority of SME proprietors in Hong Kong, many of them have put forward the views regarding this new policy. In the government's paper, the government is saying that this is the new QF is proposed to meet the needs of the business sector, but we don't see any such need at the moment, and we don't see any imminent need for change. Furthermore, on the task force, you have professional bodies and academics, but the users, namely those from the business sector and the ICT practitioners, are not represented on the task force. We hope that the government will consider carefully as to whether or not it needs to implement this QF so quickly within 2014. I hope that the government will be able to incorporate the views of all the stakeholders. Next, Ms. Omina Kam. Good morning, Madam Chair. I represent China Hong Kong Federation of Youth Culture. We are a youth organization, and we very often talk to young students about their prospects. Many deputations already said that it is difficult for business to hire IT professionals, especially in the case of professionally recognized persons. I heard from many young people that they want to join the IT industry, but there's simply no access for them, because everybody would like to develop a career rather than a job. So people only join a profession if there is a professional QF. So if the IT wants to attract more talent, we need more professional recognition. But of course, we cannot do it in such a way that at the expense of quality. Not only do we need to increase the numbers, we also need to provide for different types of qualification recognition. What the government is now proposing is duplicating some of the already existing qualification schemes or recognition. So it's like, I think we need more variety, as in using the analogy of cooking, we need more recipes. We need to improve on the composition of the task force so that we can think again as to how we should conduct professional qualification recognition of the professional qualification scheme rather than repeating something that is already in place. My name is Ho. I represent the Hong Kong Development Promotion Groups. We are, young people, ICT group representing young people. Young people, after they finish with the IT studies, many of them say there's no prospect in the IT industry. The parents will object to their joining the industry because they can't make a living. If we're going to implement the QF, will it, for these young people who want to develop a career in the IT industry, would it make it more difficult for them to join the industry? I hope members will think again. Do not hastily set up this professional QF. Thank you. Next, Mr. Fong. Madam Chair, I represent the Hong Kong Wireless Technology Industry Association. In our submission to LegCo, we have already explained that in principle we support the setting up of the QF. Having had all the individuals and deputations, I think as far as the framework is concerned, the principles behind it, we appreciate the principles behind it because the government's proposing is talking about the award of professional qualifications. It's like a retailer being awarded the Q mark, that Q mark is being recognized. When the government consulted the public, the government did not state the position clearly. people have the understanding that the government is now launching an independent professional QF scheme. So I think the government should note this. We're not, promoting a new recognition of a scheme or qualification scheme, QS scheme. So we would like to put forth some proposals to perfect the scheme. First of all, we believe that the government is not making a sufficient commitment. Government is proposing to spend $2 million and to give support for 3 years, and we think that is not good enough. We hope that the government will provide a long-term commitment. Some of our members also think that with the QF in place, it will become one of the conditions for government procurement, and as a result. So we think that the proposal should not add to the burden of SMEs, and at the same time we should help the employees of SMEs and so on to receive training so that they get recognition. So regarding the evaluation part, we can entrust the existing statutory bodies, such as the universities and the Academic Accreditation Council. Your time is up, and. Thank you. Ms. Chan. May I start now? I'm Jenny Chan. I represent Love Hong Kong, China-Hong Kong Alliance of Youth Cultural Societies. I support CY, to run for the C election again. I support Paul Chan. I think we should use technology to resolve our problems. I support the proposal to set up the QF. I support CY to step up the production of public housing. We are against Occupy Central. I like to, criticize those people who try to smear Mr. Ng and using these allegations of, conflict of interest. These are really frivolous. I think they should shut up. Ms. Chen, I think what you're saying is not relevant to our agenda today. Mr. Ng they also reminded the teachers not to mislead the students. And because if students break the law, they will need to be bailed. If the parents only know after something has gone wrong, it's too late. You criticize us of creating a white terror, reign of terror. Ms. Chen, I think what you are now saying is not pertinent to our agenda topic today. Thank you very much, because what you're saying is not relevant to our agenda today, so I have to stop you there. Madam Chan, will you please stop now?
陳女士，其實我哋已經
Madam Chan.
個咪㗎啦。好啦，你嘅時間夠啦。
Your time is up, Ms. Chan. Will you please stop talking? Please stop talking. If you don't, I'll need to ask you to leave the chamber. Ms. Chan, can you hear me? Thank you. So, we have one more deputation to speak. Mr. Xin. Madam Chair, I represent the Iron Line Rock Institute. We strongly oppose to this proposal. Why do we need to set up this QF? I will not explain why first. Let's talk about how we can get the recognition. Mr. Fong said that this is going to be outsourced. So will the government outsource this to the existing institutions? If you set up the QF, how would the examination be conducted? According to Christopher Zhong, he has achieved level 2. If 30 years we will set up this scheme, we're still testing people on punch card. I know, coding myself. Would you say I'm an expert? Would I get the recognition? I don't know. Times are changing. I graduated from Michigan University. 6 of my roommates studied computers. 5 of them are now working in Silicon Valley. We have IT professionals, but they simply, in Hong Kong, they don't simply practice in Hong Kong. If you want to attract young people, you give them the recognition. What does that mean? Does it mean that all of us present here, well, 90% of those present are men, because if someone is a lawyer, a doctor, then it's an attractive profession. But the IC industry is not attractive enough for young people. If you want to attract young people to join the profession, I think in Hong Kong we have a rule called using computer dishonestly. So I think, what about Article 20 for the internet? What are you putting for this proposal? Are you sincere? When Yahoo was incorporated in '96, I think 5 ISPs were closed down in Hong Kong or in the same evening. It shows the government's attitude towards IT. Why are you bothering with this proposal? The reason is very simple. You want to reduce supply in order to protect the vested interest in the industry. This proposal, Mr. Mok supports this proposal. It shows how ludicrous the functional constitution is. So it's all about restricting supply of talents. Next, I'll invite the convener of the task force to speak. Again, I'll give you 3 minutes. Other members may speak for 2 minutes each. I thought you owe me a minute. Never mind. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank all the deputations and individuals for putting forward the views to us. In the first session, I've said it already, and I'll say it again, that I do not represent the government, and I do not represent any political party. I'm doing this because I want to change 3 phenomena in Hong Kong. I've taught computer studies in both the States and Hong Kong for 40 years. I'm quite familiar with the situation. The phenomenon in Hong Kong is different from those in the US and China. First of all, in Hong Kong, the IT profession doesn't have a high status. It's not widely recognized. We have a shortage of IT talents. Our professional standard tends to vary. And this is different from other countries. In Hong Kong, not counting VCT, we have 5 tertiary institutions turning out about 500 IT graduates a year. Their professional status, of course, is not very high. And many of them don't want to join the profession because their parents would tell them that if you join the IT industry, it's all about video games. Why don't you become an engineer, an architect, or an accountant instead? Compared with Tsinghua or Peking University, Stanford, or MIT, people the students who join the IT faculty are the best students. In Hong Kong, it's the other way around. I've joined the task force because I want to reverse this trend. But having heard the deputations during the first session, myself, the chair, and I know some of the deputations very well, and I have realized that this has nothing to do with IT recognition or profession recognition. Some people make comments and making reference to Chicken's Essence or even Occupy Central. I think that is too naive. I didn't know that the entire task force said to be not related to IT or the profession. I'm very disappointed. I hope honourable members and the government and we want to represent the interests of young people so that when they join the IT industry, they will have the professional recognition so that, suitable young talents, more suitable young talents can join the industry. I hope we will be able to train up more IT talents so that Hong Kong can continue to develop. I also hope that the employers will make use of this QF so that we can ensure that the problem of inconsistent standards can be avoided.
Okay.
Any other task force members who wants to speak? Dennis Pang. Thank you, Chairperson. On the problem of interfacing, the task force recognizes the need for interfacing between Hong Kong and mainland. We have taken reference from the qualification frameworks in the mainland, and after detailed discussions, we have two main principles. First, we have different assessment methods under this recognition framework, so different practitioners can seek recognition in the most appropriate manners. And second, the recognition framework of Hong Kong will learn from other countries and the mainland, and this would facilitate interfacing, and it also increases the competitive edge of our practitioners. Under the papers, under paragraph 10C, under the principles, it says aligning with local and international ICT qualification and competency frameworks in order to gain easier local and international recognition. And this is one of the principles. Once the recognition framework is in place in Hong Kong, once it's accepted locally, the government will have more bargaining power in terms of negotiating with other countries to fight for greater recognition of Hong Kong practitioners. Do we need overall recognition or recognition for specific practitioners? I hope more practitioners will support this scheme, the framework. We have been waiting for it for almost 20 years. Thank you very much. Stephen Lau.
SMEs, which in this global economy should adopt the use of ICT for better business performance. Rather than having adverse impact of the framework to SMEs in terms of ICT adoption, I believe the framework would bring overall positive values. We are talking about two categories of SMEs. The first is a huge number of SMEs across all business sectors. SME management is not necessarily an ICT expert, and employing certified IT professionals under the framework will provide value for money, reassurance to SME management of their IT skills, professionalism, and quality experience. And the same with the alternative scenario where IT expertise is required through outsourcing, which brings me to the second category of SMEs, the local ICT service providers, which these SMEs employ certified professionals under the framework, will provide reassurance of quality excellence and capabilities, enhance their services' competitiveness and receptiveness, and collectively, may I say, contribute to the overall positive branding and growth of our local ICT industry. Thank you.
係，跟住係施工程先。
OK， 我想講講就係 number one address 翻你哋。
Dear Dr. George C. Someone said in the task we have no practitioners in this task force, but I am a practitioner, and Stephen is another practitioner. He's from EDS. Even William is a practitioner, even though he's under VTC, but he's the CIO and he works on information management. So that's the first point I want to address. Second, on SMEs. I'm also involved with an SME. I also own an SME, so I have thought about it, whether this framework will benefit my company. The thinking of this framework is to turn IT into a professional or chartered grade industry. And we're not saying that we're not thinking about who we will certify under the current framework. This is not an examination. A lot of people say that this is an exam. You have to pay a lot of money for exams and for certification. We are not CSA or other kinds of exams. Employers have to pay quite a lot of money, but this is not how we intend to work. Maybe there are some misunderstandings on this issue, or perhaps the paper hasn't didn't make it very clear. So please be careful and understand what this framework actually means. Someone says there is no consultation, but under paragraph 20 of the paper, we have made it very clearly. From April to June this year, we will have a 2-month public consultation. And depending on the results, we will have further amendments. So this is not all set in stone, and we will have consultation and revisions. We have been talking about money just now, but you have missed the code of ethics and conducts. We believe that with this framework, it will certainly help the code of ethics and code of conducts. And SMEs would be able to secure quality staff in terms of professional conduct and ethics. Otherwise, they cannot survive in this industry. So this framework certainly helps the industry. So let's invite members to raise questions. Let's talk about the timeline. We have to end the meeting by 12:30, and before that, we have to look at the motion. So we have to do the voting at about 12:20, and before that, we have more discussions. So at around 12, we have to start discussing the motion. So 2 minutes each, including question and answer. If we have time, we might have a second round. Otherwise, we'll have a single round. Emily Lau, Lo Ai Kwok, Sin Chung Kai, Ann Chang, anyone else? If time allows, I also have a few words to say. Emily Lau, please. I'd like to thank all the friends today for giving us their views today. The last round we are generally more supportive of the last round, but we have more comments in this round. When I heard what Professor Chin said, he was a bit stirred. I think nowadays many people are hoping for Hong Kong's IT industry to develop because we are already lagging behind and we're trying to reach a consensus on this issue. But this is very difficult looking at the circumstances today. Professor Wong said he is very supportive. He was also a little bit angry. And he said, he mentioned the assaults by DAB, but I hope you know members are entitled to their opinions. This is an open hearing today. This is an open session today. I think such suggestion, for example, the suggestion to end the discussions is too radical. Communication is two-way. If we end our discussions, it will do no help to Hong Kong. So I hope the member should reconsider the motion. I have a question for Dr. Wong. The members they disagree with the framework because it's not beneficial. Do you agree with their views? The work has been going on for the last 10 or 20 years. I'm very surprised that some people know nothing about our work and they think it's very hastily executed. I'm sorry, but time is limited, so Lo Ai Kwok, please. I think Dr. Wong is correct. This is not a new issue. And I think this topic has been discussed since a long time ago. However, the consultation paper we see today is very similar as what we discussed about the framework more than 10 years ago. But we cannot find any answers in terms of government support to the framework from this paper. Under the Institute of Engineers, we already have information engineers, and we have similar topics discussed under the British Institute of Engineers. We have a statutory body, the Institute of Engineers, and it has real power. But the body you are mentioning is only a non-statutory body, and it cannot even fulfill its basic tasks. So I cannot see any real improvement since 10 years ago. And I don't recall any member saying that he or she wants to end this discussion. So perhaps we can discuss more in a moment. I do respect the task force, and I appreciate their efforts. We have the basic framework, but it has not fulfilled specific functions demanded by the industry. Sin Chung Kai, please. Last time I mentioned my feeling after 10 years as electrical member under the IT constituency. I hope Professor Chin, I urge Professor Chin not to give up, and your work is very important. You should keep going. I think this should, I think the framework will be implemented before universal suffrage. Well, I think the arguments, I think the situation is similar as the discussions for universal suffrage. People are generally supportive, but some people want to introduce thresholds, etc. This is only a consultation paper submitted by the government. You might have suggestions or counter proposals with regards on the paper. But what we are saying there is we don't have a chance to raise our views. This is detrimental to Hong Kong's ICT industry. We are going backwards, and this problem has been with us for the better part of 20 years. Mr. Lee said it might be 50 years. I hope you won't fear this proposal by DAB, the largest political party in Hong Kong. I hope the government can persist with your work. Charles Mok, please. Professor Chin said we might be too naive. Well, I think I'm also naive sometimes. I think politics and IT are two separate issues. So I hope we can come back to the discussions on professional qualifications. I oppose the idea of functional constituencies. When we discuss a lot of issues nowadays, people are accused. People have always accused the functional constituencies. I'd like to give some time to Professor Chin to respond. I just have one question. We have been talking about attracting new blood to the industry. We don't have a lot of students here today. Well, if there are, please let me know. In an academic environment, do you think the qualifications framework will attract more new students? Of course, yes. Or else I won't be here today. I wouldn't be here today trying to make this happen. I'm not sure if I can consult the students anymore if the motion is passed. Chairperson, if the motion is passed, can I still consult the students? If it's passed, you have to go back and think about it again. No, you can still consult the students. When I consult the students, I've been teaching computing for 40 years, and I meet the parents every year, and they often ask why my kid has to study IT, and he should study engineering or something. We should, and that's why we have to improve the standing of the industry in order to attract more people. And this situation is only specific to Hong Kong, and the case is different in China, in Guangzhou and in the Pearl River Delta. But Hong Kong students place IT as the last priority. Ms. Ann Chang. So first, I'd like to welcome all the friends here today, the professors and doctors. I was a little bit late, but I have been following the discussion on TV from my office. If you look at the qualifications, the recognition framework, I have worked very hard to promote the launch of this framework. In the previous meeting, I've raised different suggestions to enhance the upward mobility of our youngsters, and one of the recommendations is the QF. We have received a lot of comments nowadays. A lot of young people are quite anxious. They have received certain qualifications or certifications. Do they have to take another exam later on? And for employers, will they face challenges in recruitment, or will they have to bear higher costs? So I hope you all understand the concern by different parties. If the recognition framework is to be successful, both employers and employees have to work together. Collaboration is the key. Practitioners must realize that by taking another exam or obtaining another certification, they will have better prospects or better salaries. And at the same time, we must have recognition from the trade, from employers, and from the chambers. And once employees reach a certain level, they will be paid more. So I'm supportive, so please don't misunderstand. Ms. Chang, your time is up. UC Wing, please. Thank you, Chairperson. During the last meeting, my feeling was that this framework was too simplistic. We only have a vetting committee and appeals committee. We are talking about different rules and procedures and penalties. And once we have a set of rules, there might be people exploiting the system. And they might try to mislead consumers. And that way we will have a lot of complaints from consumers or from the users. Is there any mention of this on the paper? I don't see anything. We should have a committee for consumer complaints.
And then you have to have a vetting mechanism. And then the industry must have an appeal mechanism. In that process, you need the participation of member and non-members of the sector. And here, I don't see the proportion of non-members. Under the Board of Governors, you have the Secretariat and then 2 committees. The framework is too simple. the moment, we have a number of bodies that are subject to criticisms to the effect that they are investigating into themselves. So the same problem may occur with this framework. So we need to do public consultation. I do not agree that we should so hastily implement the framework. Mr. Christopher Chung, first of all, I have to make it clear that the DAB is not opposing the QF. But number one, the QF shouldn't be implemented by the government. Lawyers, accountants, and doctors are governed by their own professional bodies. Why is it that the IT sector has to be regulated by the government? Number two, in the government's paper, there are a lot of ambiguities. Are we going to recognize professional grades or technician grades? The government only asks us to recognize the framework first, and then they will go into the details. You have to make yourself clear. I asked them about recognition. Their answer was ambiguous, so of course I object to it. And just now members of the sector made it very clear that in the industry we have mutual recognition and QF. We have the Computer Society, Hong Kong Institution of Engineers, and so forth. The Hong Kong Institution of Engineers has already gained mutual recognition with their mainland counterparts. So just now some speakers were telling lies. The DAB would like the IT sector to be healthy and to enjoy autonomy within the industry. We shouldn't be led by the government. Are we under a planned economy? We're now upholding free economy. Mr. Sin Chung Kai of the Democratic Party has been in the field for 10-odd years. What has he done for the industry? Many members of the profession have to rely on the mainland for infrastructure as well as accreditation. Now we're going to recognize them, but the mainland may not recognize us. That will hurt the profession locally. Mr. Yu Si Weng, you have submitted an amended motion. We have to reserve some time for handling and discussing the motions. So I'd like to thank the deputations and individuals for attending. You can be excused, and then our members will continue to discuss the motions. Oh, yes, you can continue to listen to this meeting in the public gallery. We are making photocopies. Yes, we're making photocopies.
兩個佢影緊。唔該你。咁就要等請佢哋兩個發言先係咪？俾阿何俊賢都同意睇下修訂有冇人要講。唔係，咁都要俾阿姚思榮講。呢個講完，呢個講，咁跟住大家講，咁跟住就佢哋兩個總結每人。你話你而家收到係咪過半數？而家參與嘅議員係同意處理呢兩個動議？如果佢哋冇問題，咁我哋就開始進行。好啦，各位委員，我哋繼續會議啦，好嘛？
Members, let's continue. You should have received Mr. Stephen Ho's motion and Mr. U.C. Wing's amendment. Will we need the support of a majority of members before we can process the two motions? Any objection? Yes, we need a simple majority to handle the two motions. Yes, to handle the two motions. All right, if there's no objection, we'll discuss whether or not to handle the motion. There's not much time left, so 2 minutes each. Mr. Stephen Ho and then Mr. U.C. Wing, and then members can raise their hands before speaking. Madam Chairman, in the first round, I made it very clear that we're not objecting. It's just that we would like the administration to do what I say in paragraph 2 of the motion. I heard the expression temporarily shelf is a rather strong expression. We just want the government to reconsider its proposals. We're not opposing the establishment of the framework. It's just that time has not matured yet for that. Mr. U.C. Wing, Madam Chairman, I do agree that QF is something good. To the public, from the professional point of view, this will be a very good arrangement for the future. However, the sustainability, professionalism, and authority of the QF must be considered. From the government's paper, it's really too simple. The document has not rationalized existing bodies in the world. In Hong Kong, we've already got a sound established system. So we believe we should give more time for consultation. We should not hastily decide on the approach to be adopted. The government should tidy up the proposed framework and consider the functions of the QF, etc., before hastily implementing the QF. So my amendment asks for an extension of the consultation period for broader and more comprehensive consultation. I omitted public there, and I think the public should also be consulted before implementing the QF. So members, Dr. Low Wai Kwok, thank you, Chairman. I'll be brief. During the two sessions just now, I've already expressed my opinion. Previously, at the panel discussion, I raised similar concerns and did not hear any answers. So, Professor Chin, please understand my intent. I really want this to be done in a good manner. But for many years, a lot of issues remain unresolved. So I'm a bit worried. As regards Mr. U.C. Wing's amendment, I do consider it appropriate. In terms of wording, Mr. U.C. Wing's amendment is based on the wording of Mr. Stephen Ho. Today, somebody want this to go quicker, some want it to go slower, some want to have more discussion, some disagree. Anyway, we all consider that we should do it well in terms of professionalism, human resources, interface with the mainland, etc. All these are covered by public views. The original motion is actually heading towards that direction. So for temporary shelving, if we have worry about that expression, then Mr. U.C. Wing's amendment is appropriate. Next, Ms. Emily Lau. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I'm not so familiar with this profession, but I very much support the development of the ICT sector. Just now, Professor Chin was rather emotional. He asked whether he should refrain from discussing with students. Of course he can discuss with students. Now we have Mr. U.C. Wing's amendment. Professor Chin, if we pass Mr. U.C. Wing's amendment, will your work meet with difficulty? Well, temporarily suspend is, of course, very strong. We're asked to stop talking. Well, but that's deleted already. I'm talking about the original motion, but I'm referring to the amendment. I asked whether the LegCo has the power to stop me from discussing with my students. That's why I asked the question. The amendment is much softer. So I'd like to thank Mr. Yu for moving the amendment, which is to ask for an extension of the consultation period. Even an extension of 1 day is an extension. Of course, I'm joking. But of course, if you ask for an extension of 10 years, does that mean that we will only take action after 10 years? So how long should it be extended? Well, we should talk to the profession, and when the profession deems it okay, we would like to have a very satisfactory solution. Maybe half a year's time. If by then we still want an extension, we can further extend the consultation period. We're not working for a deadline. So they want to listen to all members of the sector. That is, those who are not originally included should also be consulted. Maybe I'm too naive. Well, the profession is not related to the QF. Well, Professor, this is politics. Politics is always like this. Well, I'm saying that the ICT profession is very, very likely related to this QF only. Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Well, Madam Chairman, I really cannot support the motion and the amendment. The amendment has retained the expression that the proposals are not comprehensive enough and are doubtful in terms of effect. I think this is dealing a blow to the task force. If we just want to extend the consultation period, do we really need to move a motion in LegCo? The task force and the government asked to listen to the community for 2 more months. That's no big deal. Sometimes we have extensions up to half a year. Why should we deal a blow to the authority and credibility of the task force? Whether the original motion or the amendment, they are dealing a blow to the task force. This is a political struggle. I oppose political struggles. Mr. Charles Mock, I can understand Professor Chen's feeling. I think our colleagues in the profession can feel his feelings. Well, before I saw the original motion, Mr. Stephen Ho already verbally told us the content of his motion. Then we all thought, oh, we don't need to continue with this exercise then. Well, we can just continue of public consultation. They should find it their responsibility to come to discuss with LegCo members. I approached Mr. Chong, and then Mr. Yu came up with this amendment. The expression temporarily shelf is gone now, but I still have great reservation over other expressions in the amendment. That is, the proposals are not comprehensive enough and their effects are doubtful. Well, the proposals are for consultation. If at such an early stage we already say that the proposals are not comprehensive enough and their effects are doubtful, then I really have great reservation. Well, it may still be all right if you say that the proposals are not comprehensive enough. But if you say that the effects are doubtful, you're actually hugely cutting down on the original proposals. That's tantamount to saying that it makes no difference whether you do it or not. But in the past 20 years, the profession has thought otherwise. Well, the contents of the consultation document are not about these aspects. So, they're not seeing eye to eye on the contents of the document. Well, in the motion, it is also said that you should think about supply of manpower and management policy and so forth. I'm really very worried. I think we must have solidarity within the profession. And because of the reasons I mentioned, I really cannot support the original motion and the amendment. Dr. Chang Lai-wan, Madam Chairman, there are certain issues that we must clarify. I've read the original motion and the amendment. The amendment is, of course, more modest. Well, just now, a doctor was here. He said that the DAB was laying an ambush here. No, that's not the case. No, no, no. Don't wear tinted eyeglasses. When did the panel first see the document? Is the last meeting. Is at the last meeting that the panel first saw the document. Well, this is a meaningful issue. We asked a lot of questions. What's the role of the government? Why should the government subvent it for 3 years? Why $2 million per year? For $2 million, it wouldn't be enough to get you a very good accreditation system. Are you going to rent a small office, 300 square feet, and just hire 1 or 2 employees? You can't even have enough to start with just $2 million. So it's not true that we don't support you. So last time we asked questions which were not answered. And this time we would like to listen more to the voices of the profession. And then we received different views from different members of the sector. So we would like to have more consultation and discussions. Professor Chin, you can talk to your students more. You can explain more to your students your concepts. You graduated from Michigan. I also graduated from overseas universities. Not just university students and members of the profession. I also want you to consult other members of the LegCo. I welcome a meeting with the DAB. We would like to listen to different views. We're duty-bound to understand this issue more. We must finish this meeting at 12:30. So for the upcoming members, please be brief. 2 minutes each. We have to take a vote. Mr. Wong Ting-kwong. Madam Chairman, the DAB is not opposing the proposal. We just want to do our job better. Mr. Sin Chung Kai said that we've been working for over 20 years on that. But time is not equivalent to effects. Well, if the results are wishy-washy, then you take back the results. You enjoy the results yourselves. We just want to perfect the proposals. So you have to understand our stance. We would like to have regulation as far as possible. We would like to perfect the regulatory regime as far as possible. We're moving this motion and amendment not because we veto the work of the task force in the past. When you're here, you always mention democracy. Under democracy, you must allow people to speak their minds. Is it that you are so authoritative that we must not speak against you? We're just making certain comments and you're actually jumping up and down, agitated. We just want to offer our comments. We're even worried about inadequate startup funds or startup resources. So try to be as calm as possible. Do consider this thoroughly. We are all working for the good of Hong Kong.
Thank you, Chairman. I've been running between the 2 panel meetings. I'm sorry I've not heard all the discussion because I wasn't sitting in my office. I was attending both meetings at the same time. Well, I think those who normally oppose the government now is in support of the government. I hope they will support the government all the time. What the government, if the government doesn't have any basic support and put forward a proposal, basically, I think what we're putting forward these suggestions in a constructive manner. It's not like yesterday when somebody deliberately tried to, do something destructive. So I think we have to. You accuse people of being political. Why did you ask yourself whether you really want to serve the this community. I'm not. And please do not interrupt while I'm speaking. Well, this motion, if we can help the government, so that at a later stage, so even if we've been waiting for this for a long time, at least we can, further refine the proposal after listening to more views, so that we can come up with a proposal that can really, help the industry, including my bank, which hires many IT professionals. So we simply want to do a better job, and the purpose of this motion is to help the government do a better job. I mean, being pro-government, being part of pro-government camp, we always pro-government. Christopher Zhong, we support the QF, but it shouldn't be done as it is presently proposed, because it would not be very effective. And secondly, even if we do not have time, if we don't put on hold this proposal, it doesn't mean there will not be any recognition. The Hong Kong IE has a scheme in place, the PCS has a scheme, so do other organizations. They also have recognition schemes. So it would not mean that the industry would not have any recognition regime. So I think we should have a consensus. Many deputations told us they're worried that whether or not your recognition scheme will affect the industry. If you recognize other people's qualification and it's not reciprocal, then will it have an adverse impact on industry? For a system engineer, system engineers from all over the world can apply for jobs in Hong Kong. But our professionals cannot bid for jobs outside of Hong Kong because there is no mutual recognition. So it's not to our benefit. You've not thought out the proposal thoroughly. So whether it's the original motion or the amended motion, we're saying that the effect is really doubtful. Putting politics aside, I'll leave it to people who want to play politics. I've been in the trade for decades. I've made my contributions. I also believe that the results are doubtful. I think, therefore, that we should think this out thoroughly. Otherwise, nobody will want to bear the responsibility. We have 1 more minute. I also like to make one point. I've known many of the deputations for years. I'm sure you know that I'm always in support of the development of the IT industry. That you see that we have 5 members of the DIB sitting on this panel. They are all present. This will show how much importance we attach to this proposal. I hope that you will not just politicize things whenever you hear the term DAB. After the paper has been released, many people have come to talk to us, expressing different views, telling us that perhaps, and that's why I realize that the consultation done so far has not been thorough enough. We're not trying to make things difficult or obstruct you. We just want you to do a better job. Some people from the industry feel that the proposal is not fair. You've not consulted them, and even the 5 DAB members. Have you talked to any one of us? None of you have approached our members about this issue. So you say the consultation has been thorough. Have you consulted the DAB? Have you approached Emily Lau? So to be fair, it's not that they deliberately want to obstruct you, but since we've heard all these different voices as electoral members, we have to reflect those concerns. We're not saying that we're objecting to your doing this, except that we want you to do a better job. So whether it's the amendment we move today, so therefore I support the original motion and the amended motion, but I would like the task force not to be discouraged. We have this situation now. This is something we've been discussing for more than 10 years. Mr. Sin Chung Kai, I also like to say this to you. Perhaps you have not, you heard, extensively the views of different stakeholders. So perhaps we should have a more open dialogue so the more people can participate and the outcome will be good for the long-term development of the IT industry. Okay, time is running out, so we need to proceed to the vote now. Mr. Yu Si-wing, you said that there should be more comprehensive consultation so that the industry and the public can arrive at a consensus. You also add the word the public to the amended motion. So we will now need to vote. Several of our members are attending the PAC meeting next door, So we will now ring the division bell to ask those members to return. Are you going to add the term public to the amended motion?
需用唔使15分鐘，因為會超過12點半㗎。係啊，
好啊，咁我哋係啦，咁我諗我哋宣布延長15分鐘啦。其實唔需。
Okay, we may need to extend the meeting, but probably we'll need to extend it by 15 minutes.
我哋咧為咗各位委員為咗爭取時間呢，我想知
Would members require a division? Yes.
過咗第一個就唔使去做第二個。
係啊，原動議就唔使啦。如果過咗先做修正案啊。你慢慢讀一次啦，即係等嗰個會議個。
佢讀定我讀啊？我讀。
你讀係啦。
定係叫阿姚思榮而家讀一次啦？
佢通常係主席讀嘅。
咪爭取時間而家讀啦，不如。
唔係，因為佢個網上廣播咧，網上廣播聽唔到聲嘅。咁變咗佢真係斷咗啦。我哋財委啊、公務啊，全部都係咁。因為你哋多啊，你哋多啊嘛，多就會係咁做。
叫鬱文可以由頭到尾讀翻嚟。啊，真係。
唔該晒你，今日辛苦你。我哋其實就我哋出先嘅 schedule， 但係 PAC 佢哋都大晒，同一座。
我仲要讀一次。 使唔使讀啊？唔使讀。好，咁啊，孫總要求。
So I will not read out the motion. So we're now voting on the amended motion moved by Mr. Yi Si-wing. Will all those who are in favour, please put up your hand. Dr. Low Wai Kok, Ms. Cheng Lei Wan, Christopher Jung, Ng Leung Shing, Ho Jun-yi, Wong Ting Kwong, Yi Si-wing, and Tony Chair. Those against? Charles Mok, Sin Chung Kai, Sit Ho, and Emily Lau. No abstention. So we have 8 in favour and 4 against, so the motion is carried. Since the amended motion is carried, so we don't need to vote on the original motion. So thank you very much for attending our meeting today. We're now adjourned.